a sigh, a shrug, you know, anything like that, because that also can be termed communication. Now, communication is a two-way street. And here's something important that you need to remember, that it's not just about talking. It involves a sender. That's the person who creates or sends the message. You have the receiver, that's the person who receives or interprets the message. And then most importantly, there's a shared system of understanding. In other words, we need to be speaking the same language, whether it's verbal, whether it's visual, or even body language. Okay. So picture this now. I'm telling a joke in English, but you only understand French. The words are spoken, but the communication did communication actually happen? No, because the understanding is key. It's important that you understand what the person who is sending the message is saying. Now, why think of communication as a lifeblood of human interaction? Why do we communicate? To connect, to influence, to express ourselves, to instruct others, or simply to respond. So whether you're giving directions, sharing feelings, asking for help, or cracking a joke, every bit of it is communication. And whether, you know, you're, well, wherever it is that you are, it's important that, you're passing the message across in perfect understanding, as it were. So you have to be speaking the same language. And the better we get at it, the more effective we become, not just at work, but in life. So as we go forward, I want you to keep in mind that communication is not just about what you say, it's about how it's received and whether or not your message lands. Okay? Now, we've covered the basic definition of communication. Let's dig a little um, for human interaction. Let's think back a second. When do we start communicating? Believe it or not, from the moment we're born, we've already started, communicating. Because what? A baby crying, that's communication. Even a toddler pointing at a toy is still communication. Okay? Eventually, we start using words, but even before that, we're already connecting with the world around us through sound, movement, expression, and that doesn't stop. In every relationship, whether it's between friends, family, co-workers, or entire communities, communication is what holds everything together. So without it, things fall apart, basically, and center cannot hold. Now, misunderstandings grow, collaborations crumble, connections break down. So if you've ever had a friendship suffer because of miscommunication, or a project go go wrong due to poor coordination, you already know that it's essential that you have proper communication. All right. Now, communication involves both the message and the manner, right? It involves both the message and the manner. So it's not about what you say alone. It's also about how you say it. Let me give you a quick example. Imagine someone says, thank you. Now imagine them saying it with a big smile and a warm tone. That feels right, nice, right? It feels nice. But imagine them saying it with an eye roll and a sarcastic voice. That's a totally different vibe, you know? So even though the words are exactly the same, the manner in which it's said is different and the message is passing across is different. So we have to keep in mind that tone of voice, facial expressions, body language can completely change the meaning of a message. And this is why communication is not just verbal, but it's also non-verbal. Okay? Now, in English, effective communication requires mastery of a few core elements. Now oops. Can that person mute themselves, please? Ooh, who is that? Ibikunle Samuel, please mute yourself. Ibikunle Samuel, please mute yourself. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now let's break this down a bit more, especially for those communicating in English, either as a first or second language. There are a few things you need to master to communicate clearly and effectively. Number one, grammar. Now, grammar ensures that your message is understood and sounds correct. For example, he goes to school versus he go to school. One small change, big difference in clarity. Okay? Then the structure. Good communication has a logical flow. Whether you're writing or speaking, your message should have a clear beginning, middle, and end. It's like an essay or a well-told story. Okay? And then there's tone. Now, this is about the feeling or attitude behind your words. Are you being formal or casual, friendly or professional? Think about how different your tone would be when texting a person versus applying for a job, okay? And then we have context. The situation matters a lot. A message that works perfectly in one setting might feel completely out of place in another. For example, sending, hey, what's up, to your best friend is totally fine. But sending the same message to your university lecturer or your boss, totally not ideal. Okay? So to sum it up, great communication is not just about speaking or writing. It's about understanding the message, the method, and the moment. And the better you get at navigating all three, the stronger and more effective your communication will become. Okay? Now, why is communication in English important? We've talked about what communication is and how it works. But let's be real, there are thousands of languages spoken around the world. So why all the emphasis on English language? Well, English is a global language. It's not the most spoken native in the world because that's Mandarin, but it is the most widely used as a second language. And that gives it a kind of universal power. Where do we see English the most? English is the language of academia. I mean, think of research papers, um, academic journals, international conferences. A huge amount of scholarly knowledge is published in English. Okay. Media, most global news outlets, entertainment channels, social media content, and even YouTube videos, they use English, or at the very least, they offer English subtitles. Okay. And then in business and technology, from websites and apps to user manuals and global meetings, English is the go-to language for international business and tech innovation, and also in diplomacy and law. Many international treaties, diplomatic discussions, and global legal frameworks are conducted in English. So if the world wants to talk, it often chooses English as the common ground. Okay? Now, let's get personal. What does this mean for you that I'm talking to right now? Well, developing strong communication skills in English can open doors in so many areas of life. For example, you need a job or scholarship, whether it's you applying for international position or winning a scholarship, many opportunities require you to demonstrate clear, confident communication in English, both spoken and written. From writing assignments and essays to giving presentations and participating in group discussions, for instance, students are confident in English, who are confident in English, they tend to perform and engage more fully. Okay. And then when you're traveling, you know, traveling becomes smoother when you can communicate across borders. Um, it helps you to build international friendships and even professional connections. So, I mean, I think I don't need to overly convince you that communication in English is absolutely, integral, an integral part of anybody's life. It helps you to even express yourself better in multicultural settings, for instance, because when people come from different countries and cultures and they come together, whether in a classroom or a workplace or online, English often becomes the shared language. Okay, so you being able to express yourself confidently, clearly, it helps you to participate fully. You're able to share your ideas and feel included. So if you're ever wondering why you should work on your English communication skills, I think this is the clear sign. So just remember that English connects you to the world, and it's not about losing your native language or identity. It's about adding a tool to your toolkit. A tool that can help you unlock opportunities, share your voice, um, navigate, I mean, this globalized world, as it were. Okay, so yeah, um, in communication is like driving a car. Okay, it's like imagine let me see. Let me look for an okay. So I know it sounds a bit unusual, but just stick with me, right? This analogy is a great way to break down the key parts of communication process in a way that it's easy to visualize. Okay, now there's a driver who's the sender, basically. Okay, now just like the driver decides where to go, the sender is the one that starts the communication process. So they create the message and decide how to express it. Now think of a speaker or a writer deciding what it is that they want to say. For example, if I'm giving you instructions like sharing a feeling or even asking a question, I am the driver steering the direction of that conversation. Okay, and then we have the passenger. The passenger is the receiver in this case, right? Now, the passenger experiences the journey but doesn't control the steering wheel because that's the listener or the reader. That's the one who is receiving the message. Okay. Now, just like the passenger can feel every turn, bump, or stop on the ride, the receiver reacts to how the message is delivered. Now, if the ride is smooth and clear, the passenger enjoys it. But it's confusing or bumpy, well, they might get frustrated, lost, or they may even tune out. Okay? Now, the car in this entire scenario is the message. This is what is being shared. So is the message in good shape? That is the car in good shape? That means that the message has to be clear, structured, and easy to follow. If the car is rusty or if the car is rusty or is missing wheels or making weird noises, that's like a disorganized or confusing message. Okay? So you have to ask yourself, is my message roadworthy? Okay? And then we have the road. The road is the channel. Okay? So is the message spoken face to face? Is it written in an email over WhatsApp? Is it shared in a tweet? Or is it delivered through a Zoom call? So just like some roads are smooth, we have highways and things like that, they're also rocky roads, full of potholes. And I know we are very conversant with like that in this part of the world. Okay. So you have different communication channels that can affect how fast and how clearly your message travels, right? And then we have the road signs, okay, and the signals. So um if your passenger, for instance, in the car is saying something like, oh, turn here, turn right here, slow down, that's feedback. In communication, feedback can be verbal or non-verbal. So a nod, a smile or question, or a confused look, a request for clarification, even silence can be a form of feedback, right? So if it helps, um, make sure that whenever somebody sends you a message or anything like that, you respond so that at the end of the day you know what kind of understanding that you have. So it helps the driver that is the sender, to be able to adjust, clarify, or continue confidently if there's proper feedback. And then, of course, we also have the obstacles on the road. So we have the noise barriers, things like that. And, things definitely sometimes can get in the way, just like potholes, traffic, bad weather. In communication, these are the barriers that we can be talking about, and things like that could be poor grammar or unclear phrasing. It could be bad internet connection. It could be misinterpreted tone. It could be language differences. It could even be distractions in the environment. All of this, these make the ride tougher and the message harder to receive clearly. So a successful communication only happens, that is, when the driver, that is the sender, knows the route, you know, and that would be the clear message, right? And then the car, which is the message, has to be in good condition, okay? The road, which is the channel, is suitable for the trip, and the passenger who receiver understands the journey. Okay, so also the signals, which is the feedback, will help steer things smoothly. So next time you're sending yourself a message, ask yourself, or you're sending a message rather, ask yourself, is my car road ready? That is my message clear and the path open? That simple check can make a big difference in how well your message is received. So basically, communication is a vital life skill. So whether it's personal, relationship, academic success, or career growth, strong communication is at the heart of it all. Excuse me. So the better you communicate, the more confident, connected, and effective you will be. Communication is not a process, is a process rather. It's not about talking alone. It's about sending, receiving, and interpreting messages that, that make sense, okay? So you have to make sure that, you're listening and you're understanding, and your whatever it is that you're saying as a speaker as well is clear and concise. Okay. Yeah, okay. So yeah, also mastery of English communication requires more than just, knowing words. You need correct grammar, you need a strong, flexible vocabulary, you need to truly understand others. Okay. So yeah, basically that's it for our introduction. Can you still hear me properly? Please just indicate if you can
Loud
still
and
hear me.
clear.
Lovely. All right. Thank you very much. Now, elements of communication. Now that we've talked about matters and how it works, it's important to also go into what actually makes it effective. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Communication isn't just about opening your mouth or typing a message. It's a dynamic process, almost like a well-rehearsed play or a movie. Okay, picture this. Every great performance has a cast of characters. It has a setting, it has a script, it has props and lighting, it has an audience that will react to it all. If even one of those elements is missing or off script, the entire show can fall apart, or worse, send the wrong message. Communication works the same way, okay? It's made up of interconnected elements, right? And for your message to be understood clearly and correctly, these elements need to work together in harmony. Now, let me put it simply. When one part of the process is weak or missing, the whole message can get lost, confused, or misunderstood. So just like a director knows every scene and cue in a play, an effective communicator needs to understand each building block of communication. So we're going to break down those building blocks, which are who is involved, what is being said, how is it being sent, what's the environment, and how do people respond. Think of it as your backstage pass to what's really going on during any conversation, spoken or written. So we have the first building block, and that's the sender. Okay? The sender, also known as the encoder. Who is the sender? The sender is the originator of the message. They're, they're the ones that start the communication process. It could be a person speaking, writing, could also be someone texting, mailing, or even using gestures to get a message across. So in other words, the sender is the one who has an idea, a thought, a feeling, or a piece of information they want to share with someone else. But here's the important part. The sender must encode the message. And that means that they need to translate their thoughts into something understandable, something the receiver can interpret. And this could involve words, whether spoken or written. It could be, tone of voice, which is either serious, sarcastic, or excited. Body language, frowns, smiles, textures, gestures, or even symbols and images like emojis or charts. So think of it like packing a suitcase. The better you organize and label what's inside, the easier it'll be for the other person to unpack it and to understand. Effective senders are clear, they're concise, and aware of their audience. And this basically means that they know how to choose the right words. They adjust their tone depending on the setting, and they consider how the other person might receive the message. So let's say you're in a classroom. Who would usually kick things off? Of course, lecturer or teacher will start the session, and he will give instructions or ask questions. At that moment, they're the sender. They're generating and delivering the message to students. So, next time you're about to send a message, whether it's conversation, text, or a formal email, you need to ask yourself, am I being clear? Am I tailoring my message to the person that I'm speaking to, right? What's the mindset of a strong, that's the mindset of a strong communicator. The second building block is the message, okay? The message is the actual content being communicated. It's the core idea, the information or the emotion that the sender wants the receiver to understand. Okay. So messages come in different words. They come in spoken words, written texts, visuals like pictures, signs, or charts, non-verbal signals like gestures, facial expressions, or tone of voice. And depending on the goal, the message can take different forms too. It might be informative, like sharing facts or knowledge. It might be persuasive, that's someone trying to influence opinions or decisions. Instructional, and this can be giving directions or explaining how to do something. It could be emotional as well, which means expressing feelings like happiness, anger, or empathy. And it could also be entertaining, like telling a story, a joke, or just basically creating a fun moment. Okay, so yeah. Okay, sorry. It seems like you can't see. Okay, right. Um, Well, okay, yeah. So what you say is just as important as how you say it. Okay, so you might have great information, but if it's unorganized or full of errors or delivered with the wrong tone, the message won't land the way you want it. And that's why your message needs to be structured logically. It has to have clear beginning, middle, and end. And it needs to be expressed clearly with simple, accurate language that matches your audience. I mean, it's like gift wrapping um, your your message, so to speak. You have to wrap it in a way that will be appreciated when it's received. So let's go back to that classroom again. Like if the lecturer is talking about the causes of First World War, for instance, that explanation is the message. That information that he's just passed, that's the message. It's the it's the message that the students are meant to receive, process, and understand. So when you're crafting a message, whether it's a speech or a WhatsApp message or even a social media post, you need to ask yourself, is my message clear? Is it well structured? And is it fit for purpose? Okay? Because a well-delivered message is a well-understood message. Okay. Why is my okay? Right. And then we have the third building block. How does the message actually travel from one person to another? That's the question to ask. And the answer is through the channel, also known as the medium. What is the channel? The channel is the pathway or the method used to deliver the message from the sender to the receiver. There are many different types of channels, and choosing the right one is crucial for communication to be effective. Now let's break down a few examples. Spoken channels like face-to-face conversations or phone calls or voice messages, that's one. Written channels such as emails, reports, letters, or text message, that's two. Number three is nonverbal channels, including body language, facial expressions, gestures, and even eye contact. And number platforms that include Zoom, WhatsApp, social media, video calls, websites, and the likes. The wrong channel can distort or delay your message. Imagine trying to explain a complex scientific concept using only emojis or giving bad news over a quick text. That's definitely not ideal, right? Now that's because each channel comes with strengths and limitations. So as a communicator, it's your job. What's the best way to get this message across? The way the message is being received. Okay. Let me look. Okay, so another example would be when a lecturer speaks during class, that's verbal or spoken channel, right? Now, when they show a PowerPoint presentation, that's a visual channel, often used to support the spoken message. Now, together, these channels work to enhance understanding and keep students engaged. Now, have you ever sent, I'm asking you, have you ever sent a message that was misunderstood because of the way you sent it? I'd like to get answers. Have you ever sent a message that was misunderstood because of the way you sent it? Anyone? Let me see. Is anybody saying anything? Oh, okay, Richard. What's that? Patrick Obahiagbon. What? That is nonsense. Okay. So I asked a question. Have you ever sent a message that was misunderstood because of the way you sent it? I can't remember ever being in such a situation because I think I'm a bit overly cautious of messages that I send. But okay, let's continue. Um, the fourth building block is the receiver, also called the decoder. Now, the receiver is the person or group of people, as it were, for whom the message is intended. They're the ones who take in the message, make sense of it, hopefully respond in a meaningful way. Now, what does the receiver do? To make communication work, the receiver must interpret or decode the message. And that means understanding the words, tone, visuals, or gestures used by the sender. And then they need to provide feedback because this lets the sender know whether the message was received and understood or if it needs clarification. Sounds simple, right? Now, miscommunication can occur when the receiver doesn't understand the language or the tone or the context of the message. So maybe the words are too complex. Maybe the tone sounds too sarcastic when it wasn't meant to be. Or maybe the context that the background knowledge of the situation isn't clear. Even if the sender does everything right, if the receiver doesn't get it, the communication has still failed. So in the classroom, the students listening to the lecturer are the receivers, and their job is to listen, to understand, and to eventually respond, possibly by asking questions, doing assignments, or giving verbal or non-verbal feedback like nodding or taking notes. Then we have the feedback. That's the fifth building block. The receiver's response, which is the feedback, is the reaction, response, or reply from the receiver back to the sender. So this tells the sender, yes, I got your message. I understood, or maybe I didn't. I agree, I have a question, or I'm confused. Without communication, so without it, communication becomes a kind of one-way street. And what does feedback look like? It can be verbal, like a question, a comment, agreement, or disagreement. It can be nonverbal, such as nodding, frowning, smiling, or tilting your head in confusion. It can be written, like replying to an email, sending a text message back, or submitting an assignment. Sometimes feedback is immediate, like laughing at a joke. And other times it can be delayed, like getting a grade or a response days later. Okay. So without feedback, communication remains incomplete. Think of it like, sending a message into the void. If no one responds, you don't know if your message hit the mark or is completely missed. So feedback lets the sender adjust the message if needed and to clarify any confusion or confirm that the communication was successful. Back in our classroom, if the student knows question or submits an assignment after a lecture, all these are forms of feedback. Okay? They help the lecturer know, did the student understand? Were the points clear? Is something still confusing? Things like that. So yeah, basically, I know that at the end of this class, you have to fill a feedback form. That's also, like the name says, feedback. Okay? And then we have noise. That's the sixth building block. So far we've talked about all the elements that make communication work. Now let's look at what often causes it to fail, even when everything else seems right. In communication, noise doesn't just mean sound. It actually refers to anything that interferes with, distorts, or blocks the message during communication. And guess what? Noise can happen at any stage, from the sender through the channel to the receiver. Types of noise, okay? We have physical noise. That's things in the environment that distracts, like loud chatter or or traffic sounds, or bad lighting, or poor internet. That's physical noise, okay? And then we have psychological noise, things like stress, anxiety, bias, stereotypes, boredom, basically mental or emotional distractions, okay? Then there's semantic noise, that's problems with the language or symbols used. So jargon, complex vocabulary, unfamiliar slang, or bad grammar altogether. Those are examples of semantic noise. And then we have technical noise. So technology-related disruptions like low battery or echo during a Zoom call or frozen screen. That's example of technical noise. Noise can occur at any stage, and the best communicators learn how to spot and reduce it. So if you don't address the noise, your message may never reach the other person clearly, or worse, may be completely misunderstood. And I know that we've had examples like that during, training classes where maybe poor internet, sound issues, and all whatnot sometimes just interfere with passing the message across. So an example would be a faulty microphone, a noisy fan, or students chatting at the back of the class in a typical classroom. All of these things are physical noise. And during a Zoom meeting, like I said before, a frozen video, audio delay, things like that, they create technical noise. And even something as simple as using too much technical jargon can create semantic noise if your audience does not understand the terms. Okay? Now, um, the seventh building block is context. Okay, but before I speak about context, I just wanted to say that communication is a full process. And when all parts work smoothly, understanding flows easily. Okay? So all of the first six that we talked about, the sender, the message, the channel, the receiver, the feedback, the noise, they're the six key elements before now coming to that seventh building block, which is context. Context is the bigger picture. Context is the situation, the environment, the background in which communication happens. Think of it as a scene, right? Where the message plays out, the same words, gestures, or tones can have very different meanings depending on where, when, or how they're delivered. Now, contexts have different types. There's physical context, where and when the communication happens. So example is a noisy cafeteria versus a quiet classroom. Okay, we have social context, and that's the relationship between the sender and the receiver. For example, you're talking to a friend versus talking to a lecturer. And then we have the cultural context. This is influenced by values, customs, norms, and traditions. So in some cultures, direct eye contact is respectful, and in others, it can be seen as rude. And in Nigeria, it's quite contradictory. Imagine a mother scolding her child saying, "Look at me when I'm talking to you." And the child looks up, "Why are you looking at me? You're so rude, you know? Well, we can be a confused lot. Anyways, and then we also have psychological context. The emotional and the mental state of those involved is what is referred to as the psychological context. An example of that would be someone might interpret or misinterpret a message as if they're tired. Sorry, if they're tired, if they're angry, or if they're stressed out. Okay. Now, the same message can mean very different things in different contexts. A context is like the frame around a picture. It changes how the image or the message is interpreted. Let's say a lecturer tells a joke, right? If it's during a casual revision class, it might lighten the mood. But if the same joke is told during a disciplinary hearing, it could seem inappropriate or even unprofessional. Same message, different contexts, completely different impacts. Okay? Now that, I've introduced you to these 7 building blocks of communication, I want you to give me an example of each of the building blocks in your own words, Um, so I want you to talk about, and each person or anyone should just talk about one of the 7, like the sender, the message, the channel, the receiver, the feedback, the noise, the context. And I'm not going to continue until I get feedback from someone or from at least 7 people talking about these 7 things. So somebody should talk about the sender, another person talk about message, another person talk about channel, receiver, feedback, noise, and context. I'm waiting in the chat room. I'm waiting. I will not continue until I get a response or responses, as it were.
Please feel free to put in your responses in the chat room. All right.
I await thee in the chat room.
Richard, Mr. Rick, Cassie, Mercy, Isaac, Carlos, Dekunle. I see you all in the class. Let's get your responses.
Let me hear from you. We still have quite a bit to get done, but I really would like to hear responses so that I'll know that we're all together. We've been talking about feedback and all whatnot, and I believe that at least we should be able to. Hello, Carlos. Okay, I'm hearing waiting to get your answer. Talk to me about any of the 7: sender, message, channel, receiver, feedback, noise, context, any of the 7. Okay, so it looks to me like you want me to go back on my word by saying that I will not continue.
Sorry,
But I
ma'am,
will.
please, you can rephrase. Thank you. Okay,
I
Richard
should
wants
rephrase.
this. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what I said, apparently there's been miscommunication. What I said was that I wanted you to give me examples of the 7 building blocks. It's a very simple question. One example of the 7 building blocks. So Carlos, if you can't tell me about a sender, what does a sender mean? Give me an example of a sender and the context in which a sender would be that. And then the message as well, from someone else, channel from someone else, receiver from someone else, feedback from someone else, noise from someone else, and context from someone else. That's what I need from anybody in the class or the people in the class, as it were. I hope I'm understood now.
Very well, ma'am.
Right. Because I gave several examples whilst I was explaining. And even if you're going to repeat my own example, at least I'll know that you're listening. I would really like to learn it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Who am I speaking with?
Okay, this is
Richard.
Richard.
Hey, Richard,
Yes, ma'am.
hi.
Yeah. So I would like to talk about the sender and the feedback. The sender, the
Lovely.
receiver, and the feedback.
See, my star students.
So,
Okay, I'm listening.
so with what I understand with everything you've said, though I'm really enjoying the class. The sender is the person that sends a message, and without the sender, there won't be a message. So it's someone that
Exactly.
sends the message to someone, maybe via email, as you've said, or via phone call, or via verbal communication. That's the sender. Then the receiver is the person that receives the message. That is, if there's a sender of a message, there will be a receiver. Then feedback to the message given. Maybe, for example, via mail. If I receive the mail, I will read to understand through. If I'm the receiver, I will read to clearly understand what is required of me. Then I'll feedback appropriately. So those are the 3 points I wanted to talk about.
You actually talked about 4.
Oh,
You
okay.
talked about,
I thought,
you also talked about the channel being the email or the verbal communication.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. I love that. Okay, so
Thank you
I'll
so much.
continue since Richard has taken 4 of the 7. If anybody is willing to still add to it, I'll be happy to hear it. But if not, I will
Okay, can I
continue.
add to it?
Okay, please, Mercy.
Okay, so you mentioned something about noise. So that's something that distorts or interface with the message. And then we could
Yes,
have something like a physical noise, something that is loud. That's noises that are so loud. Bad internet connection could also be an example of a physical noise. And then
great.
physiological noise also you could be related to,
Psychological
yes,
noise.
sorry, psychological, could relate to stress, someone feeling intimidated and all of that. Then
Beautiful.
talking about context, is talking about the situation of the environment in which communication takes place. So that's
Lovely.
what I can add to that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mercy. Absolutely. Beautiful.
Madam,
Okay.
there's a response from Rick in the chat room.
Okay. Rick. Okay, the sender is the lecturer, and the lecture is the channel in the class, and the receiver are the students, and the feedback is the students nodding or taking it. Beautiful. Thank you, Rick. All right. So at least now I know that we're together and I can continue the class. Lovely. Okay, so let's see, what do we have next? Oh, Okay, we've already talked about this. Let's go to types and modes of communication. Exploring how and with whom we communicate. Okay, now that we've looked at the elements of communication, let's explore the types. Okay, the types of communication, which is really about who we're communicating with and in what setting, because this helps us understand how communication changes depending on the audience and situation. So let's think of the types of communication zones, okay? Each zone shapes how we speak, how we behave, and how we share messages. So we have something called intrapersonal. That is, maybe we can say basically you talking to yourself, thinking through your to-do list morning. Now that's an example of intrapersonal. That is an internal dialogue, okay? You're you're thinking to yourself, you're talking to yourself, basically happens within yourself. It's your inner voice, okay? Your inner voice, your thoughts, your reflections, your mental planning, okay? So it's like, yes, mentally rehearsing what you'll say in an interview. That's an example of intrapersonal communication, okay? Then we have interpersonal, that's interpersonal. That is a direct exchange between two people. It's personal, it's direct, and it's usually informal. Okay, so like a chat with a friend over coffee or over a Zoom call, or a Zoom call with your tutor, right? That's interpersonal. And then we have group communication, which is communication within a small group of about 3 to 12 people. Usually you use it to share ideas, solve problems, or make decisions, okay? So a team discussing who will do which part of a group assignment, for instance, that's group communication. Sorry, can I just have 1 minute of your time? Let me just step away for 1 minute, please. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Yes, and then we have public communication. Now, this is basically one person speaking to a large group, and sorry, what was that? Okay, yeah. Now, this is usually one person speaking to a large group, and there's often little or no feedback. during the message. There's this like a lecturer giving a talk to a hall of students. And then we have mass communication. That's one-to-many communication delivered through media platforms. The sender usually can't see or interact with the audience. And this would be something like TV news, newspaper articles, YouTube, or even viral TikTok content, basically. Okay, so thank you. So modes of communication. Sorry, just a minute. Sorry about that. Yeah, modes of communication. And this is how we express ourselves. So think of modes of communication, or think of the modes as tools, okay, or styles that we use to deliver our message. Now, each mode adds its own flavor. And in real life, we don't blend several of them together, okay? So we have verbal communication that uses words, either spoken or written, to send a message. Then we have non-verbal communication, which is body language. You know, it uses body language, it uses facial expressions, it uses gestures, tone, and posture, often unconsciously. Okay. And then we have visual communication, which relies on images, diagrams, charts, or, excuse me, symbols to convey or even support information. And then, of course, we have digital communication, which is communication through electronic devices or platforms, as it were. Okay. Now, blending types and modes. So just by looking at the screen, you can see how this can be done. Okay. So breaking news on your phone, for instance. Imagine you're scrolling through your phone and you see breaking news alert. Now, here's how a single moment activates multiple communications, the communication types and modes all at once. So the aspect is that what you're reading alone, okay? And then you're thinking to yourself, intrapersonal communication, plus verbal, because you're writing something that, you're reading something that has been written down. And then you're reading the words on your phone, which is digital. So this is you having having blended three types of the modes, okay? Then we'll have thumbnail, that's visual, you know. It supports the message with an image. That's an additional one added to the first three. And then we have what? Emoji, that's a reaction. So, you know, the nonverbal facial expression / emotion that is sent digitally, okay? And then we have the forwarding the link to a friend. That is interpersonal, one-to-one, verbal, written, and digital. So you can see how this, how many have been blended, like 5 have been blended in one communication. Okay? Now, understanding how types and modes blend in real life help us to become more conscious and strategic, you know. communicators, whether you're presenting, texting, or reacting to a meme, you're using powerful tools. So you need to learn how to use them well. Types of communication tell us who we're interacting with. Okay? Is it with ourselves? Is it with a group? Is it with the whole public? Right? And then modes tell us how we're expressing the message. Are we using words? Are we using gestures? Are we using images, or are we using a digital platform? Right? And then real life communication tools blend both types and modes. So for example, a Zoom team meeting can be group, can be verbal, can be non-verbal, and can be digital all at once. And being aware of both helps us to become better communicators. So we can just, we can adjust our approach based on the audience and the setting, and also of course the purpose. So when you understand who you're talking to and how you're delivering the message, you're in control. You're not just communicating, you're communicating effectively. And that's a skill that opens doors everywhere. Okay? Now let's talk about functions and purposes of communication. Communication always has a purpose, always. Why do we communicate? Think about it. We talk, we text, we email, we present, we post on social media, but behind every message, there's a reason. Sometimes that reason is loud and clear. For example, please submit your assignment on Friday. Other times it's more subtle, like, are you really wearing that to the party? Or we might even be expressing some kind of disapproval without saying so. So understanding the purpose behind communication helps us to choose the right words, tone, and formats. And it helps us to avoid confusion or misinterpretation. So the four core functions of communication are to inform, number one. This is the most common reason to communicate, to give information. That's to share data, to share facts, to share knowledge, or update someone on something, right? And what is the goal? Is to help them understand something that they didn't know before. So a common context, or a few common contexts, would be what a teacher explaining a new topic during a lesson, a news anchor reporting the results of an election, a student writing a summary of a research article, for instance, or a school sending out, schedule updates. Example of such a sentence would be what? Tomorrow's lecture has been moved to 11 a.m. or the water cycle includes evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. Okay? So yeah, when you're informing someone, your job is not to impress them with big words, it's to make sure they understand you clearly. And that means using simple, accurate language or a logical structure, as well as a neutral, objective tone, especially in formal settings. And then we have the second one, which is to instruct. Okay. Instructional communication tells someone how to do something. It's usually step by step, clear and confused and focused. I said confused. Clear and focused on getting a task done, right? So common context of that would be a recipe telling you how to bake a cake, for instance, or a YouTube tutorial showing how to format a document, or a teacher guiding students through an in-class activity, or instructions for submitting an online assignment. Okay, so an example of that would be turn off the gas before lighting the stove, or to upload your assignment, click on the green button. Okay, so instructional communication is informative, yes, but with a twist. Informative communication tells you about something, while the instructional communication tells you how to do it. Okay, so we've covered two of the practical purposes, that's to inform and to instruct. Let's go to persuade. Okay, to persuade. Now, persuasive communication is used when we want to change someone's opinion, attitude, or behavior. Okay, it's about influencing people, getting them to see things your way or take action. Okay, so common context of that would be an advertisement. Okay, urging you to buy a product with a limited time offer, or like saying buy now, offer till how do they say that thing? I can't remember, but you get what I'm saying. They're trying to get you to buy now. It's a limited time offer. Offer while stocks last. Exactly, that's what I was trying to say. Okay, and then we have political speeches, like encouraging people to vote a certain way, or we also have debates or essays. That is an argument for or against a topic, and then we have everyday situations like trying to convince a friend to see your favorite movie, or asking your parents to extend your curfew for those who are still under their parents. Okay, so an example of a sentence would be, oh, you should attend the seminar, it will improve your writing skills, or investing in education is the key to national development. Okay, so yeah, here are a few things to look out for when you're being when you're involved in persuasive communication, or when somebody's trying to um use that technique on you. You're hearing things like, oh, repetition, buy now, buy now, buy now, or there's the rhetorical questions like, oh, who doesn't want success? Or there's testimonials like, oh, this cream cleared my skin in just 3 days. Or people then bring statistics to the forefront of that particular conversation, like saying things like 9 out of 10 students improved after this course, or emotional appeal, like imagine your future if you don't act now. Okay, so those are examples of things to look out for when somebody is involved in the persuasive communication. as it were. Okay. And then we have what to entertain as well. Okay, so entertaining communication is all about engaging in the audience's emotions. So whether that's laughter, suspense, joy, or curiosity, it may inform or persuade in the process. But the main goal is enjoyment. Okay? So a novel that makes you cry or laugh is an example, or a TikTok video that goes viral because it's so relatable, or a comedy show, or stand-up performance, a poem or a song that moves us or makes us think, a play or a movie that we quote for weeks after, things like that, yeah, basically. And an example, of course, would be a man walks into a bar and forgets what he was supposed to order, or, so once upon a time in a far, far away land, things like that, basically. And while we might think of um, entertainment as light and fun, don't underestimate its impact, because short stories, or even just stories, basically, jokes and songs, can shape how we see the world, and teach us lessons, or even spark social change as it. Okay. Barriers to effective communication. Because to communicate effectively, we need to recognize the main categories of the barriers that can get in the way. Okay, and we have physical barriers. These are obstacles in the physical environment that prevent people from hearing, seeing, or focusing. Examples of such would be loud background noises, um, poor lighting or ventilation, faulty equipment, microphones or projectors might have issues, distance between the speaker and the audience. So, always check your environment, your physical environment before beginning any communication whatsoever. Small adjustments can make a big difference. Okay. And then we have the psychological barriers. These involve internal, mental, or emotional states that interfere with the message reception or delivery. So, stress, anxiety, anger is one. Lack of interest or motivation, bias, prejudice or assumptions, things like that. You need to try to manage your emotions and be mindful of your audience's mental states. A calm mind receives messages more clearly. And then we have the semantic barriers. Now, these relate to language and meaning, okay? When words or phrases are misunderstood, this is what, happens. You find that, there's barriers in there. Okay, so an example of that would be the use of jargon or technical terms, slang or idioms or informal language in a formal context, or poor grammar, or vague wording. So you need to use simple, clear, and audience appropriate language to reduce confusion. Okay. Then we have cultural barriers. Now, these arise from differences in values, customs, beliefs, and norms between people from different backgrounds. Like I mentioned before, eye contact, differences um in greetings and gestures, or misinterpretation of humor, formality or tone, and then of course language or accent differences. Okay, so we have to show cultural sensitivity, right, and adapt our style when communicating with people from diverse backgrounds. Somebody was I saw it on social media sometime, was it last week or the week before, when Prissy got married in Tanzania and were interviewing Eniolua. And people were making fun of him that he was imitating the Tanzanian reporters. But actually, what he was doing was adapting to the way they spoke so that they would understand him more clearly. So, those are kinds of things that you should put into consideration. And then technical barriers. We have technical barriers or technological barriers, and these basically occur when communication technology fails or is difficult to use. So, like we said before, also poor internet connection, frozen screens on Zoom, low battery or power outages, misuse of digital tools, platforms. Always test your tech tools before important communication. Backup plans are also helpful. Okay, so yeah, these are how to overcome the barriers. Okay, so basically for physical barriers, you want to make sure that you choose a quiet, well-lit space and use microphones or amplifiers where needed. Okay. For psychological, practice empathy, create a relaxed environment, encourage openness and clarity. For semantic, you need to use simple, familiar language, avoid jargon unless it's explained. For cultural, be culturally aware, explain unfamiliar customs, avoid idioms when unnecessary. And for technological, check your devices in advance and have backup plans. Okay? Because at the end of the day, you need to do everything possible to make sure that you overcome the barriers if you want to get your message across adequately. Good communication is not just about being clever, it's about being clear, it's about being thoughtful and prepared. The more barriers you can anticipate and remove, the smoother the message flows. Okay? Because, barriers come in many forms, and great communicators need to spot potential problems early. So whether you're giving a speech, writing an email, or having a casual chat, it's important to think ahead. Will my message be clear? Could anything get in the way? Is it so? If it's so, let's adjust it accordingly. It's not what you say, it's how it lands. You could say all the right words, but if the other person misunderstands or tunes out, then communication hasn't really happened.
Hello, ma'am. No. We can no longer hear you. Please, if you can still hear her, can you indicate in the chat room? Because I can't hear her from here.
No, we can't hear her any longer.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you for that. All right, everyone, please let's be patient while she gets back on the call. I think our network glitched. Thank you so much.
Did I go off?
Yes, you did.
Did I go off at any point?
Yes, ma'am, you did.
Wow. Please, when was the last thing I said?
You were still at the semantics. That was your last slide.
Oh my goodness. And there I was rambling on and on. I didn't even realize.
Sorry
Okay.
about that.
That's fine. Yeah, let me just go back. Semantic barriers, right? Okay, so
Technological barriers, we're done with that.
we're done with technological barriers.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay, so we're talking about overcoming barriers, right?
Yes, please.
We cannot see
Okay.
your screen, ma'am.
You can't see my screen. Okay, I will
Yes,
share. I
please.
will share my screen. I'll share my screen. That's fine. Just a moment. I had no idea that I'd gone off. Honestly, I was just rambling on.
That is technological barrier.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, okay. Uh, go. Technological. Okay, so the last thing we said was technological barriers. Right. Okay, so our next point of call is how to overcome barriers. Okay. Now, think of these as your toolkit for smoother conversations, whether you're in a classroom, online meeting, or a casual chat. Okay. Now, physical barriers, these are things in our environment, excuse me, that literally get in the way, like noise, bad lighting, or distance. And what is the solution to that? Choose a quiet, well-lit place where people can see and hear each other clearly. So if you're speaking to a crowd or online, use a microphone or an amplifier so that your voice carries, okay? Now think of it like turning up the volume on understanding, okay? And then for psychological barriers, this happens when someone is distracted or they're anxious or mentally mentally not open to the message, okay? So maybe they're tired or they're angry or they're stressed, okay? So the solution to that would be to create a calm, respectful environment. Use empathy. Try to understand what the other person might be feeling, or, you know, speak to them in a way that invites honesty and clarity. Remember, people hear better when they feel safe and understood. Okay. And then we have the semantic barriers. Now, this one is about language and meaning. So maybe you used a big word that the other person doesn't know, or a phrase that's interpreted differently. Use simple, everyday words. avoid jargon or technical terms unless you plan to explain them. So don't just say hyperinflation, for instance. Briefly explain what it means, especially if your audience may not be familiar, right? And then we have the cultural barriers. Now, different cultures have different ways of speaking, gesturing, or interpreting meaning. What's polite in one culture could be offensive in another culture. Okay, so you need to be culturally aware. Don't assume that everyone understands your customs or slang. Avoid idioms or expressions that don't translate well. For instance, saying it's raining cats and dogs might confuse someone unfamiliar with that expression. Is it raining cats and dog where you guys are? Is it? Mercy, is it raining cats and dogs where you are? Am I still here? Can you still hear me?
No, no.
Yes, can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Ah, so why didn't you answer me when I asked if it was raining cats and dogs? Ah, it's not
No.
fair. No
It
problem.
actually rained here, but it has subsided.
Yeah, it rained very heavily here as well.
Okay.
Anyways, so moving on. So we have also technological barriers. Now, this is a big one, especially in today's digital world. I mean, you see what happened to me just a few minutes ago. I was rambling on and on without realizing that I'd completely gone off, and I'd gone past this entire how to overcome barriers, and I didn't even realize that, nobody could hear me. So, I mean, basically the same thing. So we need to always test our tech before, we start. And that was why I tested to find out if people could hear me before we even started the class and long before even people came into the class. So, always have a backup plan also. So per adventure, like maybe if this computer decided not to work, I have a backup one that, I would, quickly switch to in order to continue this class. So basically that's, an important thing to always do. So good communication is not just about being clever. It's about being clear, thoughtful, and prepared. The more barriers that you can anticipate and remove, the smoother your message flows. So some things to note is that barriers come in many forms. Some are external, like a noisy room or bad internet. Others are internal, like personal stress or confusion or cultural misunderstandings. Great communicators need to spot problems early on. So whether you're giving a speech, writing an email, or having a casual chat, it's important to think ahead. Will my message be clear? Could anything get in the way? If so, you need to adjust accordingly, okay? And it's not just what you say. Remember, it's how it lands. I believe I've said this before. You could say all the right words, but if the person misunderstands or tunes out, communication has not really happened, okay? So always aim for understanding, not just expression. And so next we'll go to the principles of effective communication, and that is mastering the 7 C's, okay? So the 7 C's are like the golden rules for clear and successful communication. They're like the ingredients for clear and successful communication. So whether you're giving a speech, writing an email, or even sending a WhatsApp message, these principles help you connect and not confuse. Okay? They apply to everything formal presentations, classroom discussions, business reports, even casual conversations. And here's the idea. When your message flows, the 7 C's, sorry, when your message follows the 7 C's, it's more likely to be understood, to be respected, and to be remembered. So today we're going to break these down one after the other. The first one is clarity. 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 You need to say it so that it makes sense. So you might okay, imagine this. You get a message, right, that says the issue from before is still pending. And then you're thinking to yourself, which issue? From when? Who is handling it? That kind of vagueness leads to communication, to confusion. But if the message says the course registration, the course registration issue from last week has not been resolved, then suddenly, boom, you understand exactly what's being talked about. No guessing, no assumptions. That's what clarity is all about. Making sure that your message is clear and easy to understand. Your message has to be crystal clear. So how do we actually achieve clarity? Use simple, direct language. You're not trying to impress people with fancy words. You're trying to connect, okay? Then avoid vague references like that thing, or they said, or some people. Be specific. And then if you have to use a term your audience might not know, you have to explain it. Do not assume everyone's on the same page. Okay? So yeah, let's move on to, I mean, I would have wanted to explain further, but I think I'm pressed for time. So let's move on to conciseness, okay? Now, you need to, with conciseness, you need to say it short and say it strong, okay? Conciseness means say what you need to say clearly and directly without wasting words. When we talk too much or repeat ourselves, our message loses power. Okay? So before people get bored, just say what it is that you want to say and get to the point. The goal is to trim the fats. Keep only the meat of the message. A common example is, at this point in time, we are currently working on the matter. That's a lot of words to say very little. Rather, just say, we're working on the issue. Same message, shorter, stronger. Simple, okay? So how do you become more concise? You need to cut out filler words like, oh, basically, actually, in my own opinion, in order to just say it. There's no need to over introduce. Combine short related sentences. Instead of the project is almost done, we are just waiting for feedback. Try the project is nearly complete. Just awaiting feedback. You know, fewer words, same impact. Then next, we have correctness. Correctness. Get it right the first time. Get it right the first time. Imagine you receive a professional email filled with spelling mistakes or incorrect information, what's your first impression? Exactly. You'll be doubtful. You'll be confused, maybe even a little embarrassed. Okay? So correctness builds trust and credibility. Mistakes, especially in informal settings, can lead to miscommunication or worse, people not taking you seriously. So for instance, take this sentence, they're coming there at night for a meeting. First, the spelling of there is wrong. The correct spelling, rather than T-H-E-I-R, is T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E, there, okay? So they're coming there at night for the meeting, right? And a small change is what's happened here, but it makes a big difference, you know, because you're striving for clarity and professionalism. So how do we make sure that our communication is correct? Number one, always proofread. Number two, check your facts. Number three, be careful with your homophones, words that sound the same but mean different things, like Y-O-U-R, your, versus Y-O-U apostrophe R-E, your, okay? Or it's versus it's, the it's with the apostrophe and the it's without the apostrophe. They trip up even native speakers. So I mean, you need to be careful. I know that a lot of people who speak, in fact, Americans and British people even make this mistake as well. All right. And then the next thing we have is courtesy. Respect is the real secret sauce. And this one is a simple concept, okay? But it's also powerful in effect. It's about being respectful, being polite, and being thoughtful, even when the situation is stressful or someone else has made a mistake. Okay, so have you ever had someone talk to you in a way that was technically correct, but came off harsh, cold, and even rude? I have experienced plenty of that. They're saying the right words, but I mean, it's coming out in the worst way possible. Words matter, but how we say them can matter even more. So courtesy demands that you're using language that makes the other person feel respected and not attacked. It's emotional intelligence, the emotional intelligence part of communication. Okay, so let's compare these examples. For instance, you didn't understand the instruction again, or let me explain the instructions again to ensure clarity. Now, I mean, look at the difference between the two sentences. The first one is derogatory. The second one is, is courteous, as it were. So both are addressing the same issue, but one builds a wall while the other one builds a bridge. Okay? So how do we show courtesy? Use polite phrases like please, thank you, could you, and I'd appreciate it. These small words create big goodwill. And then, of course, you also need to make sure that you focus on the issue, not the person. And also, please avoid blaming or shaming, okay? And then you need to consider tone and timing. Sometimes the best message said the wrong way or at the wrong time will still backfire, okay? And then completeness is the next one. Don't leave them guessing, okay? Have you ever received a message like, oh, hey, we'll talk later, and found yourself wondering about what, when, where? That's that's what happens when communication is incomplete. Completeness means giving your audience all the information they need to understand the message and to take action without guessing or chasing you down for details. You're not just, sharing part of the picture. You're handing them the entire frame. Okay. So an example would be the meeting is later, as opposed to the meeting will hold today at 4 p.m. in lecture room A. You see that this message is complete. The first one would have raised questions, while the second one answers all those questions. Okay? So in order to make sure that your message is complete, you use the 5 W's and H. That is the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how. They're your checklist for clarity. Think from the listener's point of view. So if I receive this message, would I need to ask anything else? And then, of course, informal communication like emails, notices, or instructions, never assume that the reader has background information. You need to spell it out for them. And then we have number 6, which is consideration. You need to tailor your message to your audience's needs. It's not about you alone, okay? It's not about you alone. Have you ever listened to someone speak and you thought, this isn't for me, or I don't even know what they're talking about? That usually happens when the speaker fails to consider the background or knowledge level or the emotional state of their audience, okay? So let's say a student leader is addressing new students, for instance, and like freshers who are still adjusting, and they say something like, as you all know, SUG will be holding the AGM at the SRC hall after CBT orientation. Fresher will be wondering that, what is SUG? What is AGM? What is SRC? What is CBT? Right? Of course, the more considered version of this will be what the student union will hold its general meeting at the student conference hall after your computer-based test orientation. Now see the difference, okay? So the second version meets the audience where they are, all right? So it's important that for you to practice consideration, you need to know your audience. Are they young, new to the environment? Are they stressed? Are they in a rush? Okay, those are things that you need to understand. Or you need to also use language that they understand. If you're using technical terms, you need to explain it to them or avoid them. All right. And then speak with empathy. Consider how your words might make the listener feel respected, confused, welcome, or excluded. You need to make sure that these are very, very important things that you put into consideration, okay? And then we have the last one, that is correctness, okay? Correctness, don't be vague. You need to be vivid, okay? So correctness means being specific, being detailed, and being solid. So instead of floating in abstract words like many, soon, or things, we aim for words that paint a clear picture in the listener's mind, okay? So if the difference between some students didn't do well and 42 students out of 100 students didn't pass the exam makes sense to you, it would make sense to everybody else. So which one will give you more clarity? Obviously it is 42 out of 100 who didn't pass, things like that. So yeah, make sure that when you practice, when you want to practice correctness, you use facts, you use figures, you use real life, scenarios. Avoid words like things, stuff, some, a lot, unless you want to follow up with details. Okay. Yes, and then applying the 7 C's in English is also very important, because a few things are, will stand out and they're very important. For instance, word choice. Word choice matters a lot. Some words are, polite in one context, but rude in another context. So have you ever heard someone say things like, that's a nice thing you did? And thought, are they being sincere, or are they being sarcastic? Words like thing, stuff, something, or nice are vague. They mean, they can mean anything or they can mean nothing. So if you want to be clear and concrete, choose specific words. Instead of she said something, we will say she interrupted me by um she interrupted me during my presentation and rolled her eyes, because at that point you know exactly what she did, and anybody can interpret that as being rude. Okay. And then your tone, tone can transform a message. All right. So imagine the sentence, can you send that file? Now, depending on how you say it or write it, it can come across as a friendly, hey, when you get a chance, can you send writing or matching your tone to a situation? You need to, be very clear and be very present in what it is that you're doing. For academic writing, for instance, you need to make sure that you keep it formal. For emails, polite and professional works best. And when you're texting a classmate, just be friendly and as well be respectful. Okay. Then there's structure. Yes, structure creates clarity. Okay. So English relies heavily on word order, right? So when you're organizing your message, especially in writing, you need to put your ideas in a logical sequence. For example, um, tomorrow lecture B2 come early. Doesn't make any sense. But if you say tomorrow's lecture will hold in room B2, please come early, then that is clear and makes sense. Okay. So yeah, it's important to make sure that when you're using your words, you need to be specific and not vague. Your tone needs to be respectful and appropriate, and your structure needs to be organized and easy to follow. So when you combine that with the clarity, conciseness, correctness, and the other C's, your communication becomes not just accurate, but effective and impactful. All right. Yeah, so we've talked about these. Let's go to academic and professional communication. Say it smart and write it right. All right. So in everyday conversation, we might be casual, dropping slang, skipping punctuation in text, or using emojis to fill the gaps. But in academic and professional settings, that won't cut it. Here, clarity, structure, and tone really matter. All right. So it means that you have to learn how to, write formal letters that get the results. You have to prepare clear professional reports and academic essays, and you need to be able to deliver presentations that sound polished and not panicked. Okay. So think of it as academic and professional communication in your public version of, I'm sorry, it's the public version of you. It's you, but with polish. So, your normal way of speaking, but then when you now know that you're writing to an academic or professional setting, there's a more polished version of you that is put forward. and it's how you show confidence, credibility, competence, and all whatnot through your words. Okay, so writing formal letters, for instance. Okay, let's face it, right? In writing formal letters, it can feel a bit intimidating at first, but once you know the basic structure, it becomes a powerful tool for getting things done respectfully and professionally. So think of formal emails as the suit and tie version of your writing, right? Whether you're contacting a lecturer, applying for an internship, or following up on a job opportunity, your email should be clear, polite, and purposeful. All right. Features of a good formal email, for instance, would be a clear and appropriate subject line. Like, this helps the reader know what your email is about before opening it. All right. Example of that would be subject. Okay, so you have a subject that would say request for extension on GNS 102 assignment, for instance. Okay. And then a professional greeting, you start with Dear Dr. Okon or Dear Sir/Madam. Okay. Never use hey or hi in a formal message. I don't think I need to tell you that, but just in case you don't know, I'm saying it now. Save that for your friends, okay? A brief introduction and your purpose. In the first line, say why you're writing, and then you need to make sure you're direct and polite, okay? A respectful tone is important. So you use cautious phrases like kindly, or I would appreciate, or thank you for your time. Okay. And then a proper closing will end your email with something like, oh, yours sincerely, or kind regards, then your full name. All right. And then an example. Okay, so let me yeah, so there's an example here that says request for extension. That's the subject there on GNS 102 assignment, and it says, Dear Professor Adewale, I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to kindly request a 3-day extension on the upcoming assignment due on Friday. Due to an unexpected illness, I have attached my medical report as evidence. Thank you for your understanding and consideration. Yours sincerely, Ms. Shokoloko Bangoshe. Okay, so that's a very,
Madam name
respect.
sounds
Sorry,
so funny. Share. I said
I didn't hear
the
that.
name sounds somehow. The name
Ms. Shokoloko
Shokoloko
Bangoshe.
Bangoshe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I grew up hearing things like this, so pardon me. So anyways, notice how, respectful, clear, and to the point that it is. You don't need to write a novel. Just be polite and professional, and always check your grammar and spelling before hitting send. All right. And then there's okay, Mercy, you raised your hand. Is there something that you want to say
Yes,
outside of this?
I have a question to ask.
Okay, all right, please carry on.
Okay, so my question is about the closing remark. I've had cases where you've written an email. At the end of it, you write, thank you for your understanding. And then after that, you still write best regards. So my question is it more like a tautology, or it should be in that format? Because Thank you and
No,
best
there's no,
regards is almost looking alike.
no, it's not. I mean, it's
Okay.
something that you can, it's an added greeting,
Okay.
basically.
Okay.
You're just
Thank
adding
you.
to it by, and just to make it more well received, as it were. All right. So it's okay to say thank you and best regards.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, so next we have writing academic reports or memos. Now, academic reports and memos aren't just boring documents full of jargon, right? A very well written report tells a story with facts. It's like saying, here's what we studied, here's what we found, and here's what it means. So you'll use reports in school, like research summaries, and later in your careers, like performance reviews or market analyses. So learning how to write one clearly and professionally is a must. All right. So let me break down one for you, for instance. Okay. You have to have a title, because this is the structure that it would follow. You have to have a title. It has to be clear and specific. Maybe an example of such would be reports on the effects of social media on student performance. Okay. And an introduction with a few lines that tell the reader what the report is about and why it matters will then follow. After which you'll have the body, and this is where you dive into your findings. You use subheadings to organize your points, like the positive impacts, challenges, or survey results, things like that. And then a conclusion / recommendation will then follow. So you wrap it up by summarizing the key points and suggesting the next steps or solutions if needed. And of course, where it is applicable, you need to add references. If you use data, articles, or quotes, mention where you got them from. Okay. So, for example, you could be told to write a paper on this title that we have here. Okay. And when you're told to do something like this, what would this teach you? Basically, it will basically just teach you how to use a neutral and objective tone, how to organize ideas with headings, and how to include facts and examples or references. You need to avoid an emotional opinion when it comes to things like this, or any opinion-based language, like, oh, I think social media is ruining everything. Instead, you say things like, oh, research from XYZ University in 2022 found that students who use social media for more than 3 hours daily showed a 10% drop in academic performance. Now that's objective and that's more powerful. Okay. And then we have oral presentation skills. Okay. Now, we've talked about writing. The next thing is speaking in front of others. A lot of people find this nerve-wracking. Present, me myself, I'm I'm guilty of that. I do not like to speak in front of large crowds. I can, I will do it well, but I do not like it. You know, different strokes for different folks. Now, whether it's a class presentation or a project pitch or a public speech, how you present your ideas out loud really matter. You don't have to be a TED Talk pro, right? But a few techniques will help you, you know, be clear, be confident, and convincing. Presentation essentials, like, you know, structure is very important, because structure is everything. Every strong presentation has to follow structure, right? So, you know, there's something called the introduction. You tell them what you're going to be talking about, and then dive into the key points, you know, like 2 or 3 main ideas is important for a short talk. And then, of course, you have the conclusion. You have to wrap it up clearly and confidently. And helpful phrases like, oh, let me begin by explaining one major point to consider, or in conclusion, I'd like to leave you with this thought. You know, they help you better put your pass across your message, as it were. But don't cram too much in. All right, just make sure that each point counts. All right. Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear
Yes,
you
yes, please.
clearly.
All right, beautiful. Now you need to make sure that your body language and voice are, you know, are doing what they're meant to be doing. Your words are important, but how you say them matters more. So eye contact is important. You need to look at your audience, not at the floor. You know, your voice, you need to make sure that you speak clearly and with energy. And then pacing, don't rush. Do not rush. Pause between points. Let your message sink in. Think of your voice like a highlighter. Use tone and pauses to emphasize key ideas. All right. And then visual aids are very important as well. Okay. So use slides, use charts, use props. They're great if they support your points. All right. And then keep your slides simple. One key idea per slide. Okay. Use readable fonts and relevant images, and don't just read the slides. You need to explain the slides to your audience. All right. And then practice is your superpower. Want to get better? Rehearse out loud. Okay. Practice with a timer, record yourself, or present it to a friend. Know your content well, and your notes end up just being backup, as it were. All right. And then we have academic tone and vocabulary. Okay. So in an academic and professional setting, how you say things is just as important as what it is that you say. So the way we speak in casual conversation doesn't always fit in essays, reports, or presentations. That's why we need to adopt an academic tone, okay? So a style that's more formal, precise, and respectful, all right? So a casual tone would be, oh, I think phones in class are bad, right? But an academic tone, you say things like, research indicates that the use of mobile phones in class may negatively affect student concentration. Now, can you see the difference? Can you see the difference? All right. So you don't say things like, I think, or you know, or anyway, or stuff like that. No. You use words like the study reveals, the findings suggest, furthermore, in contrast to. All right. Great. So yeah, let's see. Okay, and then the next one is citing sources appropriately. I mentioned that before. Why do we cite sources? Why do we cite sources? It encourages you to give credit and to avoid plagiarism. Okay, so you show that whatever it is that you've put in there were backed by credible information. It shows academic integrity, that you're not pretending someone else's ideas are your own. So it helps you also avoid plagiarism, which is a serious offense in academic and professional settings. Okay, and then it strengthens your argument. You're not just giving opinions, you're providing evidence, and it honors the original author's work. Okay, so an example would be Afolayan T 2022 Digital Literacy in Nigerian Universities, Lagos, and then academic press, things like that. It's just important to always cite your your sources, as it were. Okay, so real life scenario discussion, blah, 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 blah. I don't think we need to go into this because I know time is fast spent. So what do we have left? Okay, so we've talked about all of this. I think that I explained it well enough for you to understand. So yeah, I think we're good. We've talked about all of this. So definition of communication. We've talked about the elements of communication, types and modes, um, functions of communication, barriers, the 7 C's, academic and professional use, and we have come to the end of today's class. I'm sorry it took more time than we planned, but I'm sure that it was very useful to understand. Do you have any questions before I take my leave? Any questions?
Please, if you have any question, feel free to ask. The floor is open. Okay, so while we are waiting for others to ask their question, ma'am, please can you take us back to the 7 C's of communication, number 4?
Okay, hold on. Let's go back there. 7 C's of communication. Courtesy. Okay, so what do you want me to, do you have a question in that regard?
Oh, yes, yes, I have a question. So, because I'm actually dealing with a lot of inquiries, people from different countries are always reaching out for inquiries. So my question is, where you say you should avoid harsh tones even when correcting others. Okay, so because you in trying to explain things to people, you keep repeating yourself over and over again. And I know there are times I'm not harsh, but maybe inside of me, I am already overwhelmed. But I don't want the person that's the receiver to feel that I'm overwhelmed in my message. So in this scenario, what do you think should be done? Because you've explained over and over, the person seems to ask you the same question. So at that point, what do you need to do? I can be angry with
Take a deep-
myself, but I won't be angry in my message delivery. So that's what I'm asking.
As long as it's not showing in your message, as long as it's not showing in the message, you're allowed your emotions. You're allowed to be angry. It is your right to be angry, to be frustrated even. And so, of course, the best bet is at that point in time, you may want to delay responding just in case, your anger seeps into your response. You may want to delay responding, taking a deep breath, trying to just calm down before responding, because at the end of the day, everybody requires empathy, and our level of understanding, and ability to assimilate and ability to comprehend is different. Okay. So basically, what you want to do is you want to take a deep breath, you want to step back a little bit, take some time out, get a breather, maybe even have a conversation with somebody else altogether, just so that you're a bit calmer before you then go and respond. And it doesn't matter. What you can do is to rephrase what it is you said to them before in a different manner, just so that maybe they can understand it in that way. Because at the end of
Okay. Okay. All right. All right, everybody. She just sent a message that audio has issues. And I want to believe that. Okay, ma'am, thank you so much. You can leave. Thank you. I want to believe that we all understood her. All right. So please, a very big round of applause to our trainer for today. A round of applause to her before we call it a day. Please, let's put our round of applause. All right, thank you so much, ma'am. It was a very beautiful session today. Yes, I must say, I enjoyed the session. I learned a lot myself. So a very big thank you to you. More wisdom. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for staying by. Thank you for staying by. Okay, I think someone had a question. I think Richard, your question will be answered. I think it will be answered privately because at the moment she is not. Oh, Mama is still on the call. Ma, please, if you let me just read out Richard's question if you are still on the call, or it could be done privately to him. Okay, thank you, Richard, for understanding. All right, everybody, thank you for your time. Thank you, Carlos, Isaac, Rick, Richard, Christian. Who else? They don't care. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Mercy. It was nice having you all on the call. So without